And I'm really excited for this one. From the first year I did the conference, I always like I should probably get SUU, and it just always kind of slipped through the cracks. And then with the change this year and just kind of the way student housing went, I'm like, okay, I have to have SUU present so we can work with some of these owners and make plans that have done student housing and have invested in student housing and doing the room rentals, and so that we can be able to price stuff right and be able to protect your investments so you're doing accomplishing the goals to make the money that you want to make, and provide the service. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jared, and thank you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Derek. Thanks so much for having me join you all today. My name is Jared Tippetts. I'm the Vice President for Student Affairs here at the university. My primary responsibilities are to oversee the out-of-class functions and services for the institution. And reporting directly up through me is our on-campus university housing. And as a result of that, I end up staying pretty connected to some of the conversations going on around the community as it relates to housing our students. Let me start by just offering my gratitude and appreciation to those of you who provide housing for our students. We really appreciate what you do as a partner to the work we're attempting to execute on, and educating students and preparing the next generation of employees and leaders of our communities, and all those sorts of things. We appreciate the wonderful partners we have here in our community that provide these opportunities for students from a housing standpoint. I appreciate the opportunity to come and also share with you all some information about the state of student housing here in Cedar City. I'm going to just share my screen with you so you can follow along, and it will guide my comments here. What you will see here on the screen will be just a presentation or a slide deck that we put together that we share freely and openly with potential developers, individuals who are trying to better understand the marketplace here in Cedar City. And so I draw your attention to this URL that is listed at the bottom of this PowerPoint presentation or slide deck. If you want to jot that URL down there at the bottom, that go.suu.edu/state of student housing, anytime you click on that link, it will take you to this slide deck, and we constantly update it. And so, knowing that I was going to spend a little bit of time with you all today, I went in and updated some of the numbers. Our goal here at the university is to be as transparent as possible to all potential developers and landlords and investment groups that come into our community. Our biggest challenge is knowing what's coming and who's involved in those sorts of things. And so while we do our best to remain abreast of the building and development, and those sorts of things happening, the reality is we just don't hear from everybody who's coming in. And so we do struggle at times to keep up to speed with all of the development. I'm amazed how often in the last 10 years, at least those are the years I've been working here at SUU, how often a new apartment complex or a building or things will pop up. And I haven't talked to the developer. I don't know anything about it. And so it will catch us by surprise, because we recognize that developers and investors are committing a significant amount of capital to these projects. And I think it's only fair for you to know what we know as it relates to the potential of housing those students and the needs or excess supply that may or may not be in the system. Obviously, there's never a perfect equilibrium. We will always have these ebbs and flows, as you well understand, that some years we have an excess availability in the marketplace. And then some years the enrollments are such that we don't have enough spots for our students. So we wish we could make that work better, but that's of course how how the system will work. So what I'll do is I'll go through this slide presentation. If you have questions that you want to write down and ask me afterward, great. If you want to interrupt me, I just would ask that you unmute and say something so I can hear you. And I'll be happy to pause and answer any questions that you may have. But again, my hope today in spending time with you is that you fully understand and have access to the data that we have, provide you with any of that information you desire. Okay, so jumping into it. The fall 2024 enrollment number, the number we really track is the end of term number. That's kind of our annual enrollment numbers. Of course, we look at it on a weekly basis, semesterly basis, and all those sorts of things. But the reported number that we kind of track toward is every fall semester's end of term number. At the end of fall 2024 in December, we had 16,390 students attending the university. That's on a head count basis. That's 16,390 individual students. Those students fall into three buckets. I'll talk about two, or I'll combine two of them into the second bucket. The three buckets that we look at it are, one, those who are on campus, live in Cedar City, attend classes here at our primary campus. That number at the end of fall was 8,411 students here in Cedar City. The other two buckets, one would be online students who are college, your traditional college students attending online. And then also the third bucket that's also part of this kind of remote off-campus headcount number are high school students taking concurrent enrollment courses at their high school and receiving credit through Southern Utah University. Therefore, we get a head count number for them. And then we also get a head count number for all of our K-12 teachers across the state who take continuing education credits through the university to maintain their licensure and those sorts of things. And so that's a number that also counts in our head count. Off campus, so that would be your traditional off-campus college students taking online courses, all of our master's level students, our MBA students, all those individuals who are taking online classes, concurrent enrollment, high school students, continuing ed K-12 teachers. That number, as you see, is nearly 8,000. So we are about half and half traditional college-age students here in Cedar City, half online students. One of the challenges that we run into is this number of 16,390 or 15,000, 16,000, 14,000, whatever it is, that number has grown over the years. People hear that number and they think, oh, wow, the university is really growing. And it has from a headcount standpoint, but the numbers growing in Cedar City aren't growing at that same pace. So much of our growth has been in the online space. And I'll show you with this next slide a better chart outlining our on-campus enrollments. We often get asked this question: does SUU plan to continue growing enrollments of students, those who live in Cedar City and take classes here on campus? And the answer is absolutely yes, that's the goal. The goal is to continue to grow approximately about 250 students a year here in Cedar City. Our strategic plan that we're operating under, and we create a new strategic plan about every 6 to 7 years. The current strategic plan that we just launched a year or so ago calls for us to have 10,300 students attending class here in Cedar City by the end of fall 2030. So in the next 5 years, you see we're attempting to add between 250 and 300-ish students here in Cedar City. This is an attempt to grow in lockstep with the community, to not overwhelm the system here in the community. Our former president, who was here for 7-8 years, really pushed the institution to grow rapidly, and it really candidly burdened the system and challenged our community as it relates to providing housing for our students, And so it's just caused a lot of challenges, and forced us then to quickly add more apartments. And now we're like we experienced this fall, we find ourselves being a little overbuilt in the community, as it relates to student housing. Let me draw your attention to the last 3 fall semesters in Cedar City. In fall of 22, 8606, fall of 23, 8,659. And then you'll see this drop for this fall down to 8,411, down 230 students or so. And that caught a lot of us by surprise. We, of course, like I said, track it on a weekly basis and things, but we anticipated that this fall may be a little bit of a challenge for us, but we for sure thought we could actually hit that 8,700 number, something like that. And in the end, while we had students paying, applying to the institution at record numbers and being admitted at record numbers, paying what we call an enrollment deposit, which is that next step in the matriculation process, when it came time for school to start, we had a melt of many more students than we thought. For whatever reason, they decided not to come this fall, even though they had processed through all of the necessary steps and were planning to enroll on campus or be here. They didn't end up showing up this fall. So you see, we have our work cut out for us. I do sit as a member of the President's Cabinet. We talk about this every week. It's something that we are really interested in, follow closely, or concerned about, and is something that we then talk about. What do we need to do from a budgetary standpoint to commit the necessary resources to grow that enrollment here in Cedar City? I want to be clear that we don't ever anticipate us growing to be 20, 30,000 students, at least not in probably any of our lifetimes here in Cedar City. But we do hope to always sort of maintain this 200-ish additional students coming into the community, 100 new students or additional students, whatever it might be, just in the years ahead. If we grow too fast, and some would argue that we already have, we know that, again, that it taxes our system. And in addition to housing being a part of that challenge, we also run into the challenge of students being able to find jobs in our community and a variety of those sorts of things. So there's the kind of snapshot of where we think we're going to go for on-campus enrollment. We do get asked regularly about what sort of inventory and beds do we own under university control. For conversation's sake, I always just say we own about 1,000 beds here on campus. You can see we have them in our Eccles Learning Living Center. We have, which is a traditional apartment style housing. We have Cedar Hall South and North Complex, which is more your traditional suite style, which is just a bedroom with 2 beds and then a shared bathroom and another bedroom with 2 beds. And so those 2 bedrooms share the bathroom. There is no kitchen in Cedar Hall or Cedar North. That would be kind of your traditional, what you might think of as college style dorm living. Founders Hall is an apartment suite style with kitchens, 10 roommates to a room, a large kitchen, 5 shared bathrooms. So not 5 bathrooms. That would be, there's 3 or 4 bathrooms in there. And then we own the cottages, and that's where we place some of our married students, as well as some single students live in our cottages apartments. So that's our current inventory, and you can see the room rates that range anywhere from about $400 a month to our most expensive being our cottages for single students at $625 a month. We attempt to keep track of the bed inventory in Cedar City. I've worked at 5 other universities. I find that managing and tracking our bed inventory at SUU is more challenging than other institutions where I've worked, because we don't have here in Cedar City what many universities have, which would be, a handful of really large off-campus housing complexes. Here, many of our students live in basement apartments of homes, or live in townhomes, and we just don't have the large number of big college-style apartment complexes. But we do try to track them. We try to keep in touch with all of the landlords to keep them apprised of things that are going on campus, particularly keep them aware of dates, move-in dates, things like that, when it helps as they're setting their contracts, those sorts of things. We also ask our students, we conduct a survey every fall to ask them what they're paying across the system. And you can see there, that's the data from September 2024, last fall. It looks like for shared rooms, some students out there are paying as little as $275 a month. Some are paying $500-ish a month to share a room, the average being $423. And then on a private room side, ranging from $325 to $800 a month for a private room, averaging out at about $515 a month. We do get asked regularly from developers coming in that are considering building apartments and student housing, what sort of amenities do students look for in student housing as they're building and considering developments? The thing that we hear from students more than anything is make sure it has fast, good internet and good Wi-Fi. Nothing will sour students more quickly than not being able to access their Wi-Fi for homework or, I suppose, video gaming or streaming Netflix and those sorts of things. Students always dream of living in a place with a hot tub or sand volleyball courts, some ping pong tables, pool tables, and you can see the list as it goes down there. But these are things that students really say they look for when they are considering places to live in the community. We also provide this slide to any potential developers and investors. What in conversations with folks over at Cedar City Council, what do they want us to look for? And so they have provided us with this information and asked us to share it with potential developers. And in this, you see where it outlines parking stall requirements, whether you're inside the student housing district, which are many of you may know is the zoning right around campus, versus outside the student housing district. The stalls are a little bit different. And then building heights and things like that are always under consideration as you're trying to get your development approved through the Cedar City Council process. Other frequently asked questions, we do get this quite regularly. Does SUU plan to build any more residence halls in the near future? And the answer to that question is outlined here in the presentation, is simply that for the past decade or so, SUU has deferred to private contractors to provide student housing for our students. And if there comes a time where we are not able to meet the need for our students through private developers, then certainly the university would explore adding some additional student housing. But my understanding is that conversations were had with local developers, local alums, and friends of the university many years ago. There was sort of that agreement made that the university would not compete with local developers. And so we attempt to honor that as best we can, and instead look to our partners and friends who have been so good at supporting our students. What's the students' preferred room layout? Is there a preference between private or shared? With every passing year, students more strongly prefer a private bedroom or bathroom. This is very much the norm here, as well as every university I've worked at in recent years. Some students will agree to share a room, if it means some lower costs, but for the most part, students almost always will look for a private bedroom and bathroom if that exists. The
The
challenge is they don't always want to pay for it.
Yeah,
I
the
heard
other
it. I heard a
thing
voice.
I was going to say, the other thing with that on the layout is there to help make up the, support the need for years and years and years. You saw larger projects that were 7, 10 bedrooms, and the demand for those are dropping down because of too many roommates. So right now, what we're hearing from students and as we're showing is really 4 is that magic number. So if you're looking to build and develop something new, four private rooms with private baths is like the magic number to get it done and keep it filled, and then throw in some amenities.
Yeah, Derek, thanks for that additional context. That's exactly what we hear. And for those spaces out there that do have 7, 10 students living within the same unit, we always try to say to the students, look, more students per unit gives you more opportunities to make friends and have a better likelihood of finding a friend in there and someone you get along with. The converse or flip side of that is it also is more opportunities to find someone in your living space that you don't always see eye to eye with. That
More
4
phone
number
calls from the
seems to be
parents.
pretty good. What's that?
I said more phone calls from the parents to me and my staff.
That's right. Yeah, that 4 number seems to be pretty magical. All right. So does SU plan to continue growing enrollments? I talked about that, at least living here in Cedar City. Yes, that is the absolute goal. And like I said, we meet regularly to talk about that, and we have already allocated additional resources to the recruitment process of new students for fall of 2025 to try and catch back up a little bit in that after a little bit of a down year there. And then we are always asked, what's the average occupancy rate for on-campus housing for fall and spring semesters? Historically here, SUU owned housing, we are about high 90s for both fall and spring semester. And it varies a little bit by year. One of the advantages we have as university owned apartments or housing is that there are parents who give sort of an ultimatum to their children, and that is that you will only move out of home or move to go to campus or college at SUU if you can live in university owned housing. Our admissions team tries to diffuse that and help parents understand that even though students, we don't have a ton of housing that's run by the university, there's so many great options within close proximity where you don't need to have a car. You can still live here, have a very safe living environment, and all those sorts of things. We find this more from our out-of-state non-resident students. If you leave the state of Utah, it's very standard and typical for all first-year students having the requirement of living on campus. That's not a thing here in Utah. No universities in Utah require that, but families who live in California are used to sending their older students to places and other institutions that have that live-on requirement. And then when there's younger students desire to come to Southern Utah University and we don't have that, they still sort of have that in their mind that the student has to live on campus or else they won't allow them to come to SUU. And so we hear it every year, and we lose students because we don't have enough university-owned housing. We try to diffuse that. We try to say there are so many great, wonderful, safe options right here in the community. And so we do our best to drive all of those students and those families to feel comfortable renting from our local landlords. All right, and then there's just contact information. If I can be helpful, that's my email address. That's my office number. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be glad to help however I can. So let me stop sharing my screen there. I can always pull it back up if I need to, but with that, I certainly would open the floor to questions and help with clarify any of the information that I share.
Hi, my name is John, and I've been a client of Derek's for some time. Covering what you just said, where out-of-state parents have concerns about their children living off campus. I identify with this because when my daughter went to college, it was $10,000 for student housing on campus that included only 2 meals a day, and it was required as a freshman. So I guess my question to you is, if this is the expectation of California parents, for example, do you and do you refer them and familiarize them with the student campus housing area that surrounds SUU? And do you, for lack of a better term, refer them to people such as Derek, who can provide them uh, student housing that has been proven to be effective?
Yeah, great question. Yes, so students will come to campus in the summer as part of their orientation experience and do a visit and familiarize themselves before coming. Many of our students will do that. And we have a student orientation group of student leaders, and they do a lot of that, of showing students around the community, helping familiarize the incoming student with options near campus and those sorts of things. We also maintain a listing of off-campus housing options on our website, and so we do direct a lot of students there and encourage them to look around, do some homework, get on Google Maps, see how close they are to campus. As part of that listing, one of the data points you can sort by is proximity to campus, how close it is, whether it's within a mile or a little further or whatever. So yes, we absolutely try to help these families understand that it's a little bit different here. Cedar City is a very safe place, and we believe their student can have a fine experience if they're not able to get into our university housing. So yes, the answer is we try our best to educate families and new students about the various options.
And their housing staff is really, really good at trying to keep the list updated for everyone. I think lately it's been every other week because getting ready for the spring semester, but it's usually once a month. Hey, is there anything that hasn't been removed? Do you have new stuff? And they have a pretty good idea on who's really good to work with and who is not as good. That while they don't steer, it's also there. I know there's a lot of education that goes on behind the scenes through those student leaders. So like they're fantastic, and their off-campus list is pretty robust. Which is I go on it about every other week to keep an update and see what's new and where we're competing and making sure our rents are there.
Yeah, thanks, Derek.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Same guy, John.
Yep.
So there is an absence of approximately 250 new students. I'm assuming that these are mostly freshmen that committed to going to SUU and then changed their mind. Do you
Yes.
know what happened? Did they
Uh-huh.
just go elsewhere, or did they just decide to go to Mexico or take a year off or something?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have attempted to contact all the students and better understand the reasons why they chose not to enroll this fall. And the answers varied, but a significant number of them decided to take a gap year, as they call it, and just work and figure out life. We know that a number of students that it started about 2 or 3 years ago, kind of as we were coming out of the pandemic. We started to notice a lot of students choosing this gap year option where they just said, I'm not ready to go into college. I'm not ready for that, to make that life decision about what I want to do with the rest of my life. So they're taking these gap years. We heard from some other students that they chose to go rather into higher education, go instead into technical education, and attend a technical college, pursuing trades and some of those other professions, which of course is a great option for those kiddos. I think those are the reasons why students who had who said they were coming, decided not to come, either for a gap year and to continue working, or to instead pursue a technical education. We also know that the ability to recruit and maintain college enrollments is going to be significantly more challenging for colleges and universities across the country as we move forward. There is this concept called, in the literature anyway, it talks about the birth dearth, or this enrollment cliff. When you go back 18 years from 2025, you find yourself at 2007, 2008, 2026-ish. These next few years, we're just going to see a real challenge for enrollments, because the number of high school students, the number of 18, 19-year-olds across America takes a massive drop. And that is as a result of the 2008 recession, the Great Recession. People stopped having children at significant rates. And so just 18 years later, now across America, we are forced with trying to recruit the same or more students from a smaller bucket of 18 and 19-year-old traditionally aged college students. And so colleges are pivoting, and have for the last couple of years, to try and instead enroll more adult and returning students and those sorts of things. But this enrollment cliff is going to really impact higher education enrollment across the country. Coupled with that, of course, is the pandemic and the disruption that played on kind of these, on students and their development. Students who were in middle school and early high school, now a few years removed from the pandemic, are what we had just experiencing as socially delayed, maybe from a maturation standpoint, not quite at the same level of maturation that they feel comfortable coming to college. And so that's thus the gap years and those sorts of things. And then you add on top of that, just the perceived value of higher education. Higher education is absolutely, being criticized heavily, in the political spectrum, and societally. People are talking about the value of higher education, and therefore, as a result, students are choosing other career paths, trying to avoid rising tuition costs and just all those things. So there's kind of a perfect storm that has landed us where we are today. The good news is, being situated in Utah, our enrollment cliff is not as severe as, say, the Rust Belt or places in the Midwest. So the number of 18-year-olds in Utah is not dropping at the same rate as it is in other parts of the states or other parts of the country. So we're grateful for that. Utah students, or students who graduate from Utah universities, on average graduate with the lowest amount of debt of anywhere in the country. Higher education in Utah, while always expensive, when compared to other state school tuition costs, is quite affordable. And so our legislature has been committed to higher education for many years and subsidizes higher education through through the tax dollars and state budget to preserve low or as low as possible tuition costs for our students. And that helps too. So I'm grateful to be working in Utah in higher education compared to many other places around the country. But yes, we still have our work cut out for us as students are opting out. And we saw that hit us this fall more than we've ever experienced.
This is me again. I know that the Utah state-wide higher education program is discussing eliminating some programs but adding those programs that have become more desirable. Is SUU currently looking at deleting and or adding programs based on some of the feedback you received from students in the last
Oh,
couple of years?
yes. Yeah. When you look at SUU, we've actually been more aggressive in this space than most of the universities the last several years, where we have attempted to adjust and reallocate our resources away from certain majors to what we would, maybe you and I would talk about as majors with more opportunity in the workforce and higher paid majors and those sorts of things. And yes, the legislature is going to continue to push all colleges and universities in Utah to do that. We're right in line with it, and we will continue to participate in that process. As you might imagine, being a higher education university or higher education organization, we of course still believe in the value of a broad education and having the opportunity to explore new ideas and all those sorts of things. So there will be a balance there on how that all plays out, but we want our students to come here and find a major that they think will lead to just the right job for them. So we're absolutely being quite responsive to that. And that's one of the nice things about being at a place like SUU is we're a little bit smaller, a little more nimble than a big university like the U of U or Utah State or something like that. So yeah, good question, John.
Any other questions for Jared? Okay. Thank you so much, Jared. Like, you 100% hit every talking point that I had, and you did it without any coaching from me. Cause I was tempted, like, do I want to be like, here's the questions I ask, or I just let him go? But thank you. Like, there's a lot of things that you hit. So I know I got a lot of information I was hoping to get out of this so I can finalize my numbers going into next year with the owners. In fact, I had like 4 text messages for what it's worth during your presentation going, but we need to talk and get these finalized. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
You're welcome. And Derek, thanks for the opportunity. We love to be in front of local developers and landlords and those sorts of things. I did just put a link to that slide deck presentation in the chat so that you guys can access it. Jot that down, keep it somewhere. Like I said, we keep it updated from time to time. And if you have a question that you would like us to answer and it helps us improve the slide deck for others, then we'll be glad to do that. So I see lots of people jumping into it now, but you have access to that moving forward. So
yeah. So
holler anytime.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
We'll let you get back to your day.
Okay. Thanks all.